Aloha, everybody. This is Dave Wallace coming to you from my home here in Waihawa, Hawaii, and welcome to my Sunday Talk Story Time. This week, I'd like to share with you an incident that just recently occurred, and it's a reminder for those of you who go to people's homes to perform different professional duties that when you enter another person's space or another person's home that's sacred to them, you need to be very mindful of where you're at and the sanctity and the sacredness of the space. Okay? And oftentimes, when you don't respect these spaces, you be taught a lesson. Okay? And this is exactly what happened to a 4-member crew who recently worked on a place in Kalihi. And this place was a woman's shelter. And if you think of a woman's shelter, you can imagine a place that was set aside specifically for protecting women. Okay? And in many cases, some of these women were abused, or they're abusing themselves, either through drugs or deviant behavior, or they have a spouse or partner that is abusive. So these shelters are built to protect these women. A lot of times, not only here in Hawaii, but other places around the world, when a place like this is set aside with that specific reason, and or any other sacred reason, the place develops its own energy and own entities and attract entities to this place to protect the sanctity of the place. And this is what people forget. Okay? So anyway, my story involves a group of four people who got a contract to do work on this women's shelter, and they went there and performed some work. Just right before getting a contract, one of the members of this crew got into a nasty fight with his girlfriend. Okay? And this nasty fight was pretty serious, and it affected this person's attitude and behavior. So when he went into this woman's shelter, he was already very angry. And while he was working in this space, he started venting. And the venting came in a form of swearing all the time, got into arguments with his co-workers, and just bad attitude. Okay? So as the days progressed, when they first started working, things were kind of like okay. But as the longer they spent in this space, some strange things began to happen. And the first thing that started to happen is poltergeist, things moving around by itself. So this crew had set up ladders and equipment in a hallway. They set it up a certain way, they leave, and when they come back, the ladders are all in different places, okay? Not in a place where they set it up. Also, they started observing different figurines and ornaments within the home, within this space. When they walk into a room, they find a statue on one side of the room. By the time they leave and nobody touched the statue, it's on the opposite side of the room. So the poltergeist activity started to happen. Now, when things are going weird at a workplace, a lot of times people stop and take a look at what they're doing. But this crew didn't. So things escalated. The more this man started to swear and misbehave and cause problems at the workplace, you had more serious things occurring in the forms of scratches. The coworkers started to receive scratches inside the house while they were working, and these scratches looked like it was made from human hands, and there would be no one around them. They'd be working and all of a sudden feel a pain, and they look, wow, there's a fresh scratch mark on them. Okay, so that was going on. For the person that was cursing and having arguments with the other people, things got really focused on him because an entity started trailing him. In fact, all of them could feel kind of like something trailing them and following them around, like tagging them or shadowing them. But this one guy who was swearing and cursing, uh, these entities not only stayed with him in the workplace, but followed him home. Okay? And he started to hear voices telling him to do certain things that was very destructive and cause some problems. Fearing that this whatever entity is on him or trailing him, he didn't want to go into his home to affect his family, so he decided to sleep in his car. Now, near the end of the work cycle, when they almost finished the job, uh, the last thing to happen that caused panic was this individual who was cursing all the time started choking, and felt something lodged in his throat. When he finally cleared his throat, he noticed something in his mouth. And when he spat out this thing in his mouth, it was a penny. Okay? And he did that 3 times. 1 penny the first time, another penny the second time, and 3 pennies the third time. And this was all during 1 day of work. After that happened, they started looking for a kahu who could help them. And that's how I became involved in this particular incident. Now, as a kahu, I feel my responsibility is to help people resolve issues, okay, that is created through misbehavior, okay? And when I heard what was going on, my reaction was, this is a problem you folks created, and it's a problem that you folks should learn how to resolve. Because if this is your profession, going into places all the time, you folks need to learn how to deal with this, okay? So it's not my job as a kahu to go in and save the day. However, I felt it was more this presented the people with an opportunity to learn from their mistake and correct it on their own. And it's far more empowering when people can make that correction by themselves. And they learn nothing if I go in and do things for them and assume responsibility for that. So I sat back and I talked to the crew leader and I said, this is something that you folks need to clear. It's some pilikia and problems that you folks created that needs to be resolved by you, not me. It's not my problem. It's yours. So I sat back and served more as a guide to walk them through along the way. So after hearing everything that was going on, I spoke to the man that was spitting out the pennies, and I understood what was going on. And from my take, this is what was happening. Again, you had an angry man, and you got 4 men entering a women's shelter, spreading anger and threatening each other, and the language that was being used was offensive to the energies within the shelters. You think the energy's not going to react? It will, and it did in this case. Okay, so the energies of the place, the spirits of the place, decided to teach these guys a lesson and say this is not acceptable. So the first thing I told these guys is they need to go back to this place and apologize to the spirits and the entities of the place for disturbing the sanctity of the place through their behavior. And at first they kind of like saying, "Oh, why all of us and stuff?" I says, "Well, number one, although you folks focusing on this one guy who's spinning penny as a cause, all of you folks are responsible because um, did any of you guys try to did any of you folks try to stop this behavior? And since you guys are a team, one person misbehave and you folks don't correct the situation, everybody becomes responsible." Okay, so they understood that, and so they decided to go back and apologize to the place. So on an appointed day, they called each other up and they met, and they all piled up into the company car, company truck, and headed off to this place in Cali. On the way there, they noticed something something wrong was occurring with this man who was spitting out pennies. He was sitting there very nervous and mumbling all the time, like, "I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this." And he looked really nervous. In fact, the closer they got to the women's shelter, the more nervous he got. And when they finally arrived at the shelter, this guy jumped out of the truck and started running away. And they had to chase him down and bring him back and convince him, "Hey, we need to go inside. We need to go inside the building and do this." Okay, so he agreed, and reluctantly agreed, and went up into the building. As soon as this man stepped into the building, he stopped and froze right in his tracks, and he stiffened up and yelled out, "Get out of here!" And he fell and collapsed, passed out right on the ground. The other three stood and looked at each other, wondering, "Oh, wow, what happened here?" The crew leader understood that he still needed to apologize. So he went through and gave the apology, and he said a prayer asking God for protection. And he said that after doing this, he could feel kind of like something lightening up and releasing them. And so they felt okay. But they had a problem. The guy was still passed out on the floor. So they gave me a call. Say, "Hey, Dave, what are you going to do?" So I told him, "Well, pick the guy up and take him on your truck. Put him in the back of your truck. And now you got the apologies delivered. You folks need to go down to the ocean for cleansing to get rid of the negative energy that may have attached itself to you folks. So you got the apology. Now it's time to go do the washing and cleansing." And so they picked up this guy, put him in the back bed of the truck, and they headed down to the ocean. And as they neared the ocean, they entered the park down by Sand Island, and they drove up close to the place where they launched the canoes. As they approached that, the man who was out cold in the bed of the truck popped up. All of a sudden, he was up and looking around, and he started mumbling, "I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this." And people, the crew was trying to settle him down, but he stood up and jumped out of the bed of the truck while the truck was still moving. So they stopped the truck and ran after this guy and grabbed him eventually and coaxed him down, to the edge of the ocean where he could sit and watch the rest of the crew cleanse. So the rest of the crew jumped in the water and started cleansing and playing in the water and diving and enjoying themselves at the beach. And finally, this man decided to join them. So he stood up and took off his shirt and jumped in the ocean. And he spent some time cleansing, diving under the water, and washing himself. And as the rest of the crew members started watching this guy, they noticed a sudden change over him. His tense body and attitude and facial expressions just changed. It went from all tense and ugly and angry to someone that was very calm and focused and centered. So by the time this man finished the washing and came to shore, he was a completely different person. Okay? Now, I talked with the crew leader of this group, and he actually thanked me for the opportunity guiding him through the process, because for him, it was a spiritual experience and showing that he had the power to make things right for himself and his crew. And I says, yeah, you don't need kahu like me, especially if you folks know you folks did something wrong and you're sincere about getting making things right. And this man was sincere about making right, so God and his ancestors took care of that for him. Okay, so it's been almost a week now for since this incident happened, and I have not received a call back from them, so hopefully things are good. Okay, anyway, so this is my story for Sunday, and hopefully for those of you in the service industries who cater to people in their homes or their properties, be more mindful of the service that you're providing and the space that you're entering. Because I tell you what, if these people came in to my home and started displaying the same attitude, I'll quickly remove them from my home, and I will not stand for that, okay? And this is what the spirits were trying to do. They're trying to teach these people proper behavior, okay? This is a sacred space. Don't do that. And if you continue, things will escalate, okay? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this story, and catch you folks next week. Next week is my wife and I's anniversary. We're going to be celebrating that, but I'll be posting a story anyway. Also, a reminder, I do have a book, The Journey of Our Souls, which is available on Amazon. And you can either download it onto your Kindle, or you can get your e-copy or paperback. And if you want a hardcover copy, you can check my website, www.thejourneyofursouls.com, and you have a autographed, personalized autographed copy of my book. Anyway, this is Dave Wallace. Until next week, I catch you folks later, and aloha.